就是这边呢有测光，这边后面就是这个，您选一个背景吧。这个已经连上去了，然后
他们其他人都可以看到吗？
我现在分享一下。不好意思。
Hello, greeting from Shanghai, from China. Hello.
Okay, hi, good morning. Greetings from Turkey.
Yeah, nice.
Great. Wu, Ella, it's good to see you both.
Yeah. Yes, great seeing you.
We are working on video here, so.
Okay, we will be seeing you. It will be great to see you too, Bruce.
Yeah, great. Thank you.开个小窗口，不要看那么大，我看看，开一个小一点的，我看不清他们是没有意见。你戴口罩是吧？
就我怕我听的，不是听。
你戴口罩干什么？变的呀。
好。
我好像突然间老是和他们联动了，是当中。是他们帮我训练，还是我自己训练？他也在戴口罩，雷特也在戴口罩。
Ella, if you can hear me, your university is Middle Eastern Technical University, is that right?
Middle East Technical University.
Yes, thank you.
Great, we can listen.
Good morning, Wu. It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. And it's very clear. Great. Communication is good.
This should be a nice little session here. We get some good ideas.
为什么云裸辞啊？为什么不是本地裸辞呢？本地裸辞
For Wu and Ayla, I will say that everything here has been starting late. So we may be a little behind 10 o'clock when we really get started.
Okay.
不能放 PPT，我都稿子了，到底是3年了放搞3年了 PPT。
您可以一边读稿子一边我看一下。
我怎么了？
设置一下它这个显示。
应该要做啥？
我把它视图调一下。
嗯，我这镜头好看点，那国际文件后面的镜头好看点。你可以把我镜头打开来了啊，我声也打开来了是吧？啊，那你待会共享的时候怎么共享？你把这个我的文件，我的读稿再小一点点。
Well, I'm in the witness protection program here. Better find some rights. There, now I have some light.
Hi, David.
Hello, Dave.
How you doing? I had to find light. It's dark here.
Good. So all
How
the
you
remote
doing?
people are here. And we
Good,
just need the
good.
people in Nusa Dua to be here.
I
Get
think you're at
started
home
now.
as well.
Again, please.
I am at home, yes.
Yeah, okay.
5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
10 p.m. here, so not quite as bad.
Okay, not too bad.
Things going well?
Yes, yes, all is well. How about you?
Good, yeah. Just tired of the multi-years of COVID, but not seeing people and interacting and miss that.
Mm.
We'll get together soon.
I hope so, yes.
We're having the ACSP in Toronto this fall, so we're having a similar session with Bruce.
Ah. When?
Trying to-
When in fall?
No, yeah, November. You know, so
All right.
I think that'll be important to whip up people's interest in supporting GPEAN and participating and so on. It's always an issue. People don't always see the value.
Yeah, of course.
Pertemuan di sana, Pak. Pertemuan di sana, bukan di sana.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm Bruce Stiftell from Georgia Tech in the United States and from ACSP. And I was the founding chair of GPEAN in 2002. We have a panel of GPEAN affiliates, old and new, who have different perspectives on how the network has evolved and where it might be going. And our intent for the hour is to reflect on the accomplishments of GPEAN, to think about where we've been and what the basis of our successes have been and what the challenges have been, and then to look to the future and think about where we want to go, what new initiatives GPEAN should undertake, and what we want to do in the future. So that's the game plan for today. We have a panel that has tremendous experience with this organization. And if I'll start in the room, on my right is Zorica Nidovic-Buric from Belgrade, Serbia, and Champaign and Chicago, Illinois, who has served on the Congress Committee for GPEAN the last 3 or 5 years. Paolo Silva is the current GPEAN representative from ASOP. He's with the University of Aveiro in Portugal. Aishan Derakorkat is with Griffith University and newly appointed as the GPEAN representative from ANZAPS in Australia, New Zealand. Dedan Rukmana on my right is with Alabama A&M University and the newly appointed GPEAN representative from ACSP in the States. Kai, come join us up front so they can see you. And online, your order will be different than mine, but it's Ela Babalik from Middle Eastern Technical University in Turkey, who represented ASOP to the GPEAN Council and was GPEAN chair. Wu Zhixing, who was the local organizing committee chair for the first World Planning Schools Congress in Shanghai in 2001 and served on the GPEAN Council for maybe 10 years or 12
Hello.
years. I'm not sure.
Hello. Hello. Greeting, Bruce. Greeting
And,
from Shanghai.
Thank you.
Greeting from Shanghai. Yeah.
And then also online, we have David Amborski from Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada, who is on the current steering committee for the World Planning Schools Congresses and has served on that steering committee. David G, is it forever or just the last 20 years?
No, since Mexico City, I think.
Okay, the last 15 years. So very knowledgeable panel about GPEAN. I'm going to kick us off with just a few little visuals and thoughts about the past of GPEAN, and if I could have a share screen up on the chart so that people see my slides. It was there before. Do I need to do that? Okay, I don't know why we lost it. Bear with me a moment.
No problem.
Okay, and because of the technology, I'm going to use the this mode rather than presenter mode. Please excuse me. But I will say that the idea for GPEAN was born at the first World Planning Schools Congress in Shanghai in 2001. That was a remarkable event that organized by 4 planning school associations that really showed us the power of exchanging ideas in planning education and planning scholarship. Really dynamic, some 600 academics and 200 Chinese professional planners and something like 100 media representatives. Remarkable event. We had a meeting we tried to find all of the planning school associations in the world and to bring their leaders together during the Shanghai Congress. And we identified 10 planning school associations, all of whom sent representatives to a 2-day meeting that took place during the Shanghai Congress. At that meeting, we realized we had a lot in common and that we wanted to work together, and we imagined the idea of creating a global network of planning school associations. That intent was embodied in the Shanghai Statement, which was signed on the stage at the closing assembly of the Shanghai Congress, and then later ratified by 9 of the 10 associations, and that was the birth of GPEAN. A year later, during the ASAP Congress in Volos, Greece, the 9 associations sent representatives who imagined the charter for GPEAN, and they proposed the charter then, and by the end of that year, all 9 associations had ratified the charter. And so that was the birth of GPEAN. Since then, GPEAN has organized a World Congress every 5 years. GPEAN has entered into a publication agreement with Routledge to do a series of so-called best papers books under the title Dialogues in Urban and Regional Planning, which just recently issued the 7th edition in the series. The organization has signed memorandum of understanding with UN Habitat, with ISOCARP, and with the Global Planners Network, and has undertaken a variety of joint endeavors with those organizations, as well as with Planners for Climate Action in behalf of the associations. The principle that was worked out at the very beginning was this was a network of equal partners, all of whom had to agree to initiatives in order for those initiatives to happen. We are now 20 years into the GPEAN experiment. I think we've demonstrated wonderfully the success of the idea, and we have a nice little portfolio of successful projects that have really led to quite a lot. But it's time to revisit and to think what's next. There are certainly many possibilities that we haven't undertaken yet, and we want to think about what the next 20 years will involve, but especially what the next 5 years will involve. And the purpose of this session is to imagine those kinds of additions and new developments. So I want to turn to the panelists and ask them first to reflect on the last 20 years, to think about what GPEAN has accomplished, what the reasons for those successes have been, what some of the challenges have been, and what this all means. And I want them to do that in less than 4 minutes apiece. So they can't obviously say everything, but if they would give us their highlights from GPEAN in the last 20 years, and then we'll take a little time for questions from those both in the room and online. I'm going to say let's start with the online folks first on this first matter. And I guess, you know, Wu, you were there at the very beginning, so why don't we start with you?
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. It's a great honor for this
Wu, we lost your video and audio. We see your tile, but we don't see
society, and
now we
come
hear
back
you,
to
but we
this
don't see.
round table. And it's actually really very, it's yeah, okay. And I would like to say it's okay now. It's okay. It's a great honor actually comes to really on table. And I think in 2001, of this the first Congress in Shanghai, I would like to say there's 3 major contribution actually of this establishment of GPEAN. The first, I would like to say, the contribution of the establishment of GPEAN is the We Are United. That's actually the day for me is so important, the 14th July 2001. And then we have this signed this Shanghai Statement. And afterwards, and as organized, I remembered we had really the organized totally 16 different tracks, and also the contribution of this network. Afterwards, we exchanging the difference of part of this 9 organizations. It's a great experience to know the people from the world. We are doing the same way, same work. Actually, this is the education, planning education. Also, this is really the unite. What I say, the first keywords, unite. Second, the contribution, I would like to say, great, now become the new generation of the urban planning,
Wu, if you can hear
education, and
Wu, your audio, your signal is breaking up. May I suggest you turn off your video so that maybe we have a more reliable connection for the audio?
All the participants is now it's the young generation and the lead and this, yes, yeah. Okay, good. It's good. I think the second contribution is the young generation, young student that times participated in the first Congress. After 20 years, they are the young generation and the leading young professors in different universities. I'm very happy that this young generation, they have much more global view with the network of the different schools. That times they follow the participants of the different universities, the professor, they participate the Congress. Now the students, the volunteer now, after they are study in different universities, they become the young generation leadership. This is, I'm very happy to see this second contribution, the young generation. The third one contribution, I would like to say the Congress and also afterwards the network. We begin to know that we are facing the same difficulties. Since then, we actually, before the Congress, everybody say we have facing the difficulties in our country, in our part, in our the continents. But today we much more say we are facing the coming difficulties, coming challenges, the climate challenges, and the new problems of the world. So it's very good. It's that we have the facing the mind, we have the same difficulties and the challenges. This is also bigger contribution. I think we built a global view. So this is what I say, 3 biggest contribution of the establishment of the GPEAN and also the first Congress of this 20 years. I would like to come back. Thank you. Here, I would like to say also thank you, the colleagues. I cannot forget from the ACSP, from the ESOP, from the APSA, and also UNZAPS, and the colleagues from the different continents. And thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. We're right on target at 4 minutes. That's just what we need. Thank you. Let's turn to Ela Babalik in Turkey. Ela.
Okay, good morning, everyone, once again. It's great to be here with all of you, with all the colleagues. Very briefly, let me also share my thoughts, my experiences with GPEAN. My term at GPEAN has been from 2013 to 2019. And when I stepped in 2013, the first thing I remember was the growth of the network with new members. The Turkish Planning Schools Association and the Indonesian Planning Schools Association has just entered the network at that time. And my personal view about this was that addition of new associations, so the growth of the network with new associations, really brought value to the discussions of the network because it meant exchanging different education practices, approaches, different challenges and achievements from different contexts. And also, as Professor Wu said, I'm saying different, but most of the times we were just finding out that we had common challenges that we could overcome together. And talking about the exchange of approaches, I must say that one of the most valuable outputs of this network, from my point of view, has been to learn about different formats of education like Planning Studio, plus I think a valuable output for all the associations was also to learn from each other different formats of events and activities, such as different formats of meetings, congresses, publications, awards and prizes that each association have been carrying out. I recognize that we have transferred many best practices from each other in terms of these events and activities, and try to make our planning associations more effective, efficient, more active, more participatory. Also, in the term that I was in GPEAN, I have seen a strong link being developed with United Nations, thanks to the active involvement of Bruce there. From the mid-2010s onwards, GPEAN Governing Council, GPEAN member associations got involved with various UN activities. So GPEAN has been active in the World Urban Campaign in preparation of Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. GPEAN attended and contributed to the first UN Urban Thinkers Campus in preparation of UN Habitat. It also participated to UN Habitat in the meeting in Quito, contributed to the new urban agenda. I remember GPEAN adopting a resolution expressing its interest in working with UN Habitat on capacity building for the new urban agenda. I think these were important steps. Also, the network held various sessions in scientific conferences of each association to discuss what these international policy documents meant for urban planning, how we can educate planners to address these documents. And I would like to emphasize here that these actions were not mere exchange of knowledge and exchange of experiences, but also co-production of new knowledge, co-production, co-formulation of approaches in our planning and education activities. Of course, the main platform for these activities, although I mentioned conferences of each organization, the main platform for these exchange of ideas, for co-production of knowledge, has been our World Planning School Congresses too, a great platform for interaction between our schools, between our associations, a great platform for exchange of knowledge. And in addition, as Bruce mentioned, the dialogues in urban and regional planning also serve this purpose of interaction and sharing and co-producing knowledge. So while I finish, similar to Professor Wu, I just want to emphasize a few keywords here that I try to mention in this speech, in this reflection. Sharing of knowledge and good practices between associations is an important keyword for me. Co-production of knowledge, co-production of new practices, approaches in planning education. And thirdly, the keyword interaction. But this is interaction between schools, between scholars, and between policy, practice, and education. I will stop here for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayla. Let's turn next to David Amborski online. David, please go ahead.
Thank you, Bruce. I think you can hear a lot of commonalities across the group here. You know, this this idea of working together and the cooperation. Actually, I think part of it was generated in 1991 with the first ESOP and ACSP conference, and then that followed that in 1996 in Toronto, because people began to realize between two associations how important this interaction was. And actually in Toronto, we had, I think, over 800 people from 40 countries. So it began to emerge into that. And I recall at that conference that the people who were thinking about the GPEAN organization, although it might have a name then, Mike Hibbard and Anthony A. and Louis Albrechts were already talking about something to move towards a more global approach. So we had this evolution going in place because people began to see the benefits from the interaction cooperation across all the planning schools and all of the organizations that represent the planning schools. So I think that there was a lot of forerunner that came into this. But again, the benefits have been, I think, tremendous. I think Ella and Professor Wu have pointed out a number of them. One of the things that became obvious was that we began to have the academics working together, sharing knowledge, sharing information. In the early years, it was clear that there wasn't as much knowledge across the world about who was doing what. But now when people actually meet in person, they begin to work together. We began to see the formation of working groups and of other organizations. Example, that would be property law and property rights. So I was involved in a number of these conferences going back from Mexico City to Perth and to Brazil and now to this one in Valley. And you began to see more groups asking for space and asking for the opportunity to have their meetings. So again, the interaction grew over time. Another important part of that, of course, was the students, the young scholars, the emerging scholars, the PhD students, running the PhD programs, and having them begin to work together and learn together and understand what research is going on across the world very early in their career. Many other people came to it later in their careers, but having people emerge with that connections and those contacts worldwide, I think are something that's going to benefit planning academics and the research that proceeds as we continue to go forward. So those things were all very important. Also speaking with one voice, the roles we've had with Habitat and UN Habitat and with ISOCARP, and beginning to have an organization that can more effectively participate in these activities and represent some of the key issues from a global perspective. So it gave us more strength and more power. And of course, learning from each other. One of the things we talk to each other, other planning schools, what they're teaching, how they're teaching. We go back and reflect upon what we're teaching in our curriculum. How do we prepare our students to be planners of the world and look at the world issues better? So it comes back also to revising our curriculum and understanding what needs to be done in a global world of planners and planning education. So all of those things come into play, I think, that are very important and continue to play an important part. And I think they've grown over time. I think our roles grown over time. We know we've had the dialogue series, as mentioned before, that's been very important where people cooperate and work together. And I just think that general cooperation and building that capacity, building that knowledge, and being able to effectively actually voice some of the concerns with organizations about global planning issues is what's been very important. I think I'll leave it at that point, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let's come back into the room here, and maybe we'll start on the far side with Zorica and walk across. Zorica Nedovic-Vudic.
My own?
Hold it real close. No.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for inviting me to join this interesting and I think important panel of kind of reviewing and rethinking and going back and forth with where we stand and where we were and where we go. So I couldn't help but go down a little bit on memory lane as I was invited to join. And I was an attendee on the first World Planning Congress in Shanghai when the GPEAN was founded. And as Professor Wu mentioned, I was probably one of these younger scholars. It was in my first 6-7 years of academic career, my first time on Asian continent, my first time in an Asian city. So it was a huge learning that I felt even just by being there in person. Now, unfortunately, we hopefully will get away from virtual as soon as possible, because I do believe in this presence, personal presence, and learning from feeling the environment, seeing the environment, and also meeting the people. So I was there standing on the bank of Huangpu River and then being in awe, but by, on one side seeing the Bund, which I don't know why I didn't expect, that I didn't read about Shanghai, but it's somehow being in real there in front of me, kind of a European part of the city, which I don't know why I didn't expect. It was obviously some kind of ignorance. And then on the other side, Pudong, which was the modernism, postmodernism, the global signature urban development. So, and also the dynamism of mega cities. So I think that even just learning of being there in itself, for me as an educator, and this is what I will focus a little bit more today, I felt that it followed me through my teaching. I became a cosmopolitan educator, scholar, planner. I felt at that time. And I imagine for many of my colleagues, the congresses over time had that kind of effect as they participated. Clearly, the key activities that were already mentioned, the congresses themselves, the publications, and the networking, I think transferred and transpired into our own personal, individual scholarly activities in teaching, research, and others, collaborations that emerged using the dialogues in planning as supporting materials for our teaching and so on. The challenge now, and I will talk about it a little bit more later, with some of these activities to be perhaps more formalized, as implicitly, I think there's an effect, but more direct effect, more deliberate activity might be something that we might look in future, and to really achieve the mission of Shanghai Statement, to improve the quality and visibility of planning and planning education, and develop an inclusive communication network. So I believe that the achievements have been made, and again, going specifically to teaching students, raising new generation of planners, as at that time I was the young one, but the activities that are already ongoing in terms of PhD workshops that precede the congresses, and also in some cases planning studios for masters and undergraduate professional planning students, and competitions, student competitions, I thought were extremely valuable kind of germs and activities, again, for nurturing that next generation and bringing up and really revitalizing the profession with a global community that really is global at the very start of their career and of their learning and education. So I will stop here. I think for me, these were some of the key successes and achievements, and I think they're significant so far.
Thank you, Saritza. We turn next to Kai Bergamini, who I did not introduce at the beginning because he wasn't in the room at the time. Kai is with the Pontificia Universidad de Católica de Chile and is representing ALIUP here at the World Congress. Kai.
Thank you, Bruce, for the invitation. We prepared some work with the past president of ALIUP. They know better the history than I can see. And for that, I say first, the Latin American Association of School of Urbanists and Urban Planning, ALIUP, founded in 1999, constitutes a regional space for reciprocity and collaboration to face different spatial planning challenges, which directly challenge university institutions dedicated to training professionals in urban planning and regional planning. First, except for the urban planning degree at the Simón Bolívar University, Venezuela, the undergraduate training in urban planning has been recently implemented in Latin America, which is why the member of ALEUP have highly valued this instance of meeting and discussion and being part of GPEAN. ALEUP has constituted a platform to legitimize the existence of this program through contact between similar schools in Latin America and the world, particularly the Global South, and joint feedback and reflection in terms of curricular structures and training in competence. Challenge for teaching, such as innovative practice against interdiscipline and contribution of research as a factor of differentiation in the professional training of urban planners and regional planners, and the commitments and opportunities present in the link with communities and the environment. ALEUP has allowed the institution that make it up to actively participate in various initiatives promoted by Global Planning Association Network, forming part of the dialogue around the challenge we face as a planet and the role that the city have in achieving greater justice and sustainability. Although it was only in 2016 that the majority of the world inhabitants reside in the city, Latin American urbanization process reached the majority in the 80s. That is why everything that happened in cities has become fundamental for inhabitants of Latin American countries. Faced with great challenge that this represents for one of the regions that managed to be predominantly urban before most of the world, Latin American university must attend to the responsibility of preparing urban planners who will face the challenge that the cities and communities will face. Being part of GPEAN has allowed us to strengthen ties and open new opportunities for collaboration to promote the training of Latin American urban planners according to the challenge that our current neighborhood, cities, and territories demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Let's turn to Paolo Silva from Europe.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. Well, my perspective here comes from representing ESOP into the GPEAN since 2019, and being involved in the GPEAN as a network that then links with other networks and institutions at the global level. So the global perspective for me, it's very important. I understand and I read GPEAN as a global move in line with other global moves that occurred in these first 2 decades of the century. And the UN Habitat and Habitat Uni are two of those initiatives. In 2012, UN Habitat established the Habitat Uni, which is an interface between UN and academia. And this became an opportunity also to discuss at the global level informality issues, urban generation issues, gender issues, etc. So this is becoming, for GPEAN to become a part of this is also to influence the kind of topics and of research that is being led and shared at the global level. Also in a more operative way of participating in this common endeavor of achieving the sustainable development goals. GPEAN has been present in the World Urban Campaign. We recently had elections in which now we have Bruce Stiftell as our academia representative, one of them. So, and this is also this is also the result of an active participation of GPEAN, but also of the different associations that take part in GPEAN. And another value, another added value that I found in this network can be unfolded in 2 ways. On one hand, the opportunity to have this regional diversity and to be able to learn these the different the differences that we can experience at regional level, but also our common goals and our common interests. And on the other hand, the continuity, the temporal continuity that this network has been experiencing, and myself as a recent comer to the network, I've been experienced this what we are witnessing here, that so many people since the beginning are still very active members of GPEAN, and this is also a very important capital, human capital that we have in this network. And I will stop by here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo. And let's move halfway around the world to Australia, and Aishin Korkan.
Thanks, Bruce. So I'm one of the newest members of the GPEAN Council, so I don't know too much of the history of the hard work that has been happening behind the scenes for bringing these big events we all benefit from. So first, I think I would like to thank everybody who has been in the past and present a member of the council for bringing these events and activities and all the things that GPEAN has produced, because I personally benefited a lot from them. And like I think join Zoritsa in the trip down the memory lane and talk a bit more personal about what GPEAN gave to me and how I benefited from it. I was a PhD student during the 2001 Shanghai Congress, and at that time I had attended conferences of 3 of the current member associations. As a student back in Turkey, I had attended to TUBOP conferences, Turkish Planning Association. Then in my PhD during the US, I attended ACSP and ASOP conferences, and they each have a unique flavor, and I enjoyed each one of them for different reasons. ACSP and ASOP are international conferences, but as expected, they are dominated by their regions. So in 2008 in Chicago, I attended the joint ACSP ASOP, which was really different because it wasn't dominated by one region. And that was one of the unique experiences of the 2001 Shanghai Congress to me, was that there was so many different perspectives and it was truly international. And that diversity was very, very important. And as this talk so far showed, there are a lot of differences, but there are also a lot of commonalities. So we may be working in different systems, whether it's political systems, whether it's university education systems, and there might be subtle differences in the challenges that we are facing, but we are actually facing very similar problems, trying to solve them in similar ways. And this learning from each other, it has been extremely important. So I think there was something truly different and unique about the Shanghai conference. And I think the theme of this conference 20 odd years later brings that back together really well as a global village. GPEAN in that 21 years became truly important in continuing that tradition of the Shanghai conference and bringing this diversity and helping us share the global challenges. Others have talked about the achievements of GPEAN and its activities through the years, but running 4 World Planning School Congresses, publishing 7 volumes of dialogues, providing input to UN Habitat, World Urban Forum, Conference of Parties for Climate Change, and a lot of other activities we might not hear about. These are really important because we're not just planning educators. We should be trying to shape the planning practice around the world as well. So GPEAN hasn't been just working connecting planning educators. It has been trying to shape planning practice as well. So I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Aishin. And last commentator on this first question, Dedin Rukmana from the US. Dedin.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everyone over here in Bali and everybody virtually. In honor
to be here to represent SCSP in this session. Let me give a little context here why I am here. 2001, I was still in Los Angeles completing my master's degree, and then I came to the state. That's why I met Bruce there. I know 2006, Bruce was not in campus during that Congress. So I just learned that something's going on out there, right? And then after that, I active at SCSP until today, particularly with this special group or interest group at SCSP, which we call Global Planning Education Interest Group, or GPEAN. I was co-chair that group back in 2016, 2017. And then also now I'm appointed as SCSP reps to GPEAN. So that's why I would say GPEAN for me is new, but I already learned along the way from Bruce because I'm very fortunate to have Bruce as, I would say, my mentor. And what I learned from my experience as scholars in US, members of SCSP, members of GPEAN, and then what we can do, GPEAN, moving forward for next 20 years. So first point I like to say here is about network. That's why GPEAN stands for Global Planning Education Association Network. So I like to emphasize on network, meanings that I like to see more engagement from all associations to advance planning education, to advance our discipline. We need also to provide benefit for all members, association. I'm giving you an example here. In my case, back in 2018, I started my edited book, and then it's get published in 2020, Routledge Handbook of Planning Megacities in the Global South. So at that time, I was looking for contributing authors of my book, which is all over the world. I like to see more contributing authors from Africa, for megacities in Africa, megacities in China, India, all over the world. So I kind of struggle to find them. That's why if we have this GPEAN, get more network, it's easier for any scholars in everywhere just to get connected with somebody else in the world. There is something that I like to emphasize this about network. Number two is, Zorika, you said also mentioned about this award. GPEAN also have an award for students, but it is of course just only in US context or US levels. But if we have this GPEAN, I mean GPEAN have also student awards. This recognition is very high for students to have that award internationally or globally. So it's something that we need to consider, awards for students, maybe for dissertations, maybe for theses, or maybe for articles that we also have in GPEAN. Same thing with case studies. GPEAN have developed case studies library in our website. Of course, we like also to share this. So why we also develop this type of case studies around the world. Anyone in other associations, if you have case studies, we can share each other. That way, anyone teaching at American universities, they can learn something else from ASPI Indonesia or APSA in Asia or Africa or any other part of the world. So that's something for our students. And last point is planning studio. This is also something that I just learned from this Congress. In the pre-Congress activity, I was invited to be one of these presenters for planning studio. At that time, my university is, I would say, small university, small program. we don't have a lot of leverage or resources, right? So if GPEAN can also provide this their platform to connect with other part of the world, and then we share each other in terms of our needs for planning studio. Of big schools, of course, they can do that by themselves to connect with other part of the world. But school members at SCSP who are, I would say, small program, they will benefit from GPEAN if GPEAN can also give that resources to get connected. So schools in Africa or schools in China or in Latin America, they can share their resources and get connected with us here in the US. So that's a last point that I like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Denton. So, you know, I think we've heard a lot of agreement, but also a number of different things said by specific commentators. Clearly, there's value to the exchange, to networking, to co-production of knowledge, as was described, but also personal growth for the individual faculty who've been involved in the GPEAN initiatives, especially the congresses. And there have been international policy impacts and impacts on planning practice. So a wide scope of accomplishments. I think we can be very proud of the last 20 years. I'm going to take a moment here to see if anyone who hasn't spoken in the room or online has a question or a comment that they want to add before we move on to discussing the future. Casey, I think we got to get you a microphone.
Thank you. I'm Casey Dawkins from the University of Maryland in the US. Thanks for putting together this panel, by the way. This is my first sort of interaction with this group, and I'm really have learned a lot just by these last few days, learning about the organization and its history, and particularly this session. I'm really interested to learn more about how the activities with the UN habitat came about. You've sort of touched on that a bit, but I found that to be really interesting, and it's sort of a different kind of activity than even some of the member organizations typically get involved in. So I wonder if maybe this is Bruce's sort of question to comment on, but how did that come about? And then related to that is, have there been any discussions of getting involved with other UN activities? For example, I'm personally very interested in activities around the right to adequate housing and rapporteurs activities in different nations around that issue. And I know that's more issue specific, but had there been discussions of more sort of focused initiatives around topics that sort of are in the planning universe?
So I'll comment, but Paolo and Ela, you may want to comment as well. The Habitat Connection started really in 2007 when UN Habitat was preparing the 2009 Global Report on Human Settlements. And they had decided that the theme of the 2009 Global Report would be planning sustainable cities. And so they reached out to GPEAN at that time and asked whether we would participate by drafting the chapter in that report on planning education. And GPEAN put together a team of 17 investigators around the world who surveyed planning schools in their own countries, and that led then to the chapter 10 in the 2009 Global Report on Human Settlements. That kind of got us on the in the visual screen of the UN Habitat staff. And in 2011, Habitat had the idea to create a university network initiative. And so they invited GPEAN to send a representative to the organizational meeting at the University of Westminster in London. And that then led to a memorandum of understanding between GPEAN and UN Habitat, in which GPEAN would have a position appointed on the steering committee of Habitat's University Network Initiative. And that has gone forward since then. I was the first person who was that liaison. Paolo Silva now is the liaison in that role. That led to a small suite of other things, most notably membership in the expert group that developed the guidelines, the international guidelines on urban and territorial planning that were very important to the new urban agenda. And most recently, the creation of Planners for Climate Action, in which GPEAN is a founding participant. So there've been a suite of activities with some significant outcomes, but as you suggest, Casey, there's lots of other UN work that is planning relevant and lots of opportunity to engage with that. And I think the question is how much energy can we muster and sustain in order to engage with those things. Yesterday at the president's meeting, there was advocacy for playing a greater role in international policy and GPEAN being the conduit to bring planning faculty from around the world into those discussions. I know Paolo and Ella, if you have anything else you want to say. Ella, anything?
I think you have made quite a comprehensive explanation anyway, but perhaps I can just add by saying that GPEAN is the network of the association, so it's also possible for each association to start an initiative or start a collaboration with UN regarding any policy, I think, because at the end, GPEAN has signed a memorandum of understanding, but also every association can do that. I think what I remember, if I'm correct, is that whenever as the GPEAN Governing Council, we had a resolution to step into collaborations or projects with UN or any other body, we had always informed the associations and we encouraged the member associations, because that is the power of the network at the end, to have more associations and then the associations encouraging their member schools. So looking at it in that pyramid would also help. I mean, we don't have to wait for the governing council to take a step. As Bruce said, there is limited people and energy there, but it would be great to have further events, further collaborations.
And then I might add that while liaising the GPEAN with the UN Habitat, I can give also the more operative side of it. So many of the activities that have been developed count with the GPEAN contribution, namely on providing open doors to the academia, to inviting, well, very relevant scholars to be part of the UN Habitat and especially Habitat Uni initiatives. In the last two World Urban Forum, I was particularly involved in organizing networking events with UN Habitat and GPEAN, and our network, and I would like to underline what Dedan said, we are a network, and this is how the network works. It's really when we have one of these requests is the possibility to cover as much as possible the different regions of the world, bringing academics from different areas and specialties and interests of research into these events. I can simply refer in this last World Urban Forum in Poland 2 months ago. We had a very interesting networking event between research and academia, in which we had a chance to have at the same table UN Habitat staff and representatives from worldwide academia, experience and sharing experiences and common interests, for instance. So this is one of the links between the two.
Thank you, Paolo and Ella. Let's turn to the second question of the morning, the question that relates to the future. So we'll ask the panelists to comment on the needs of planning schools in the current era and things that they believe GPEAN could be doing to better serve or to serve more greatly the needs of our planning schools and our planning scholars and educators. Maybe we use exactly the opposite order. Deden, you've already started making some suggestions, and perhaps you have some others. Let's start with you.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, because in the first 20 years, I just observing GPEAN from you, Bruce, and from my activities in ACSP. But for the next 20 years, I think I already said that in the beginning of my remark, but I like also to emphasize the importance of networking that can benefit everyone. No exception, meaning that everyone members of associations, school association, part of GPEAN need also benefit from this. Meaning that if we like to do some award for students, everyone get that same opportunities. If we like to develop that case studies library, we like to every part of the world also get encouraged to be part of that case studies libraries. If we like to develop these urban planning studios, international collaboration, we like also to get everyone also get same opportunities to develop that urban planning studios. And then we also provide scholars around the world to get connected, to get know each other. So if somebody, let's say in India, they like to make books, edited books, and then asking for collaborators around the world, GPEAN can provide that assistance, help. So it's something that I like to see in the next 20 years from GPEAN.
Thank you, Deden. And the next, Aishan Korkan.
So I've been thinking about what's been happening around the world in the last few years, and also just thinking about the sessions I've been in the Congress, and we are facing an increasingly complex urban systems, mega cities, and increasingly complex problems. So I think the importance of working collaboratively, learning from each other, co-producing knowledge is also increasing tremendously. So we need even stronger ties and networks, and there's a great role for GPEAN in being an instrument for this. We have heard both this morning in this session, but also from the president's addresses, the importance of GPEAN as a network for sharing knowledge. And the past 3 years with the pandemic has shown us newer, different ways of collaborating, which made things in a way easier. So I'm also thinking about what are the big challenges and what do we need? And one of the things that I've heard in the sessions, and yesterday we had a session of the development of open access teaching material that we can share. And it was also mentioned this morning as well. Open access research is one of the big trends in research right now, but there is also maybe even a greater need of open access teaching material or sharing. And that will make sharing experiences of different but similar, different places facing similar problems even better, and making our teaching maybe truly international. So more exchange of faculty or joint teaching opportunities. The international studio was a good example of this. You know, how can we spread these to become regular things and not every 5-year World Planning School Congress kind of events? There are also a number of needs that planning schools have, and one of them, a shared, I think, concern around the world is promotion of planning. And Zorica pointed out as one of the missions of GPEAN as making planning education and planning more visible. And this was very striking to me. I don't know how it was in other parts of the world, but during the coronavirus pandemic, planning should have been at the forefront in the response, but it wasn't. A lot of other professions were just constantly mentioned, constantly in the media, were involved in decision-making. And I think there was a missed opportunity globally because planning wasn't visible. So we have a great task, and I think all we need to work maybe more with professional associations in each country. One of their missions is making planning more visible, but as educators, we also need to be working in coordination with them and make planning more visible among public and decision makers. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Paolo.
Yes, I would like to maybe to distinguish two different approaches to what can be for the future the GPEAN agenda and activities. One is I think we should impact in the short term on one hand, and this can be done or could be done by addressing very urgent matters. Climate emergencies, obviously something that is in our faces, in front of us, more and more in a more and more visible way. And for that, also picking up from this Congress, one thing that I've been noticing is, apart from going to this idea of the joint studios and having this kind of immersive experiences for students, also the need to go back to local knowledge and to embed this local knowledge into planning and into planning education. So I think there might be a need also to follow this shift in planning education, to start to look for different approaches. On one hand, to have this global perception of what can be the future of planning education, but feeding it with this local diversity. And going to this local diversity, one of my main wishes could be to have more involved in the same level, with the same intensity, the different regional associations. Unfortunately, not all the regions of the world are at the same pace in terms of planning education, and to get us more together in terms of leveling or getting closer the different regions of the world in terms of planning education could be definitely one of our main challenges. Going back to our interaction with UN Habitat, definitely there's also there a need to have an interchange, not just to address UN Habitat needs, but also to do the other way around and to provide to UN Habitat what is the GPEAN agenda. But in order to make that agenda more robust, I think that despite the fact that our committee is composed by representatives from all the different associations, it will be also important to have maybe a more regular meeting involving more the presidents and of different associations, because this has been shown during this Congress to be very beneficial, to have this more intense meeting of the different presence associations, as we had just yesterday afternoon. And I will stop by here, Pastor Kai.
Thank you, Paolo. Okay.
Thank you. I would like to say, in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in particular Goal 11, which seeks to ensure that city and human settlement are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, it's highly relevant to be able to count on this space for academic discussion, to define a position regarding this challenge and the role of the university must play in order to particularly describe the problem of Latin American city and the training of professionals capable of facing the challenge that lie ahead. Specifically about GPEAN, when it was created 20 years ago, the technological development that exists today and the form of communication that technology allow did not exist. In this context, we believe that one of main challenge is related to how this network incorporate not only association and planning in school, but also how we reach academic, doctoral, master, or undergraduate students and allow for an exchange between them to face the global challenges that have been talked about a lot in this conference. We imagine how GPEAN allows to academic like me interested in sustainability education in Latin America to search for other academics worldwide, exchange experience, propose collaborative research project, connect our doctoral study, etc. Finally, in the same sense, from the integration of the vast bases, we imagine GPEAN as the global voice of the planning school to show the phenomena that occur worldwide, but with the reality of the different regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. And Zoritza last in the room, and then we'll turn to the online group.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to complement and add a little bit more about the ideas that were already presented. I think we do have, some commonalities already showing up. And I just also want to preface by understanding the nature of the organization of GPEAN as a network and also truly volunteering organization without really any major funding or staffing to do things. So it is really relying on the time and energy of people who are involved, as I think some of you already mentioned, Paolo and others. So I just want to, in terms of existing activities, obviously building on them and continuing, and since I'm decided to focus today more on educational side of things, continuing with the workshops for PhD students, studios that were mentioned, competitions, adding perhaps the awards more significant for various categories, not only the competitions. I think it would be extremely valuable to continue it. Actually, at this conference, I was a member of the steering committee along with David and Eduardo on behalf of GPEAN, and I was very pleased that Indonesian colleagues did organize the studio, both the studio and the competition. And it was excellent experience for everyone, even in this hybrid mode that was somewhat limited due to the pandemic, but still coming through actually. So just in terms of education, I think we are looking at the new generation of planners and professionals and scholars, and I think GPEAN can take a leadership role in that. I think Aisha mentioned having this open teaching. I forgot the exact name now, but I was thinking, based on my background, I was thinking about clearinghouse, because GPEAN cannot do anything, but it could be a clearinghouse of people and institutions contributing information about their curricula, teaching tools, methods, case studies, accreditation standards, or other membership criteria, cross-cultural studios. There's a lot of possibilities. Perhaps GPEAN could focus only on international side of international programs, international studios, and so on, and case studies. So this role as a clearinghouse, it could also somehow have a profile of planners around the world. I think we come from different regions and we're educated from different disciplinaries. We draw education, planning education draws on different backgrounds. Some come from architecture and urban, and some come from geography, regional science, some come from engineering and surveying. And actually, even that understanding of the landscape, I think, would be useful for our cognition of where we're coming from. So again, it is about planners and our new generation, and building on the common problems that we're facing in terms of issues and problems in planning, and being able to be responsive and be able to put planners on the forefront of the current issues that are facing our societies, including climate change and others. I think it needs to be reflected on planning education and educating planning, not in a traditional way with the long-term view and the plans that are developed in with extensive processes and so on, but maybe introducing the skills and competencies that are more reactive and immediate, creative problem solving, reaction adjustment, accommodation to the immediate situations, and how planners can insert themselves in these immediate problems that are happening, whether it's pandemic and the impact on space and design or some others. So I think that GPEAN could play a leadership role in terms of suggesting possibly meta-level competencies for international planners and also for planners that can respond to these emergencies and issues that are not a traditional long-term planning kind of environment. So again, kind of moving from more kind of the final note, and what I think could be also the contribution of GPEAN is helping various environments and our institutions, which are already quite, I would say, we as academics and educators are quite sensitive to context, to social, racial, ethnic groups, sensitivity to variety of environments and issues that are present around the world and within our societies, but it could be more structured and formalized. And again, GPEAN could perhaps help with reinforcing or encouraging even more competencies that would counter the introvert views and actually more make our education more extrovert and really countering maybe some of the trends that are happening in our societies and so on. So I see a lot of potential. Obviously, not everything could be done, but I think in that educational realm, GPEAN can do more in a structured and formalized way as a network, obviously, not to actually do everything on its own. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaritza. Let's turn online, and we're still going with the reverse direction. So we'll go to Canada and David Amborski.
Thank you, Bruce. Lots of good ideas and reflections here. You know, I think the first thing is I think we really want to really enhance GPEAN's visibility, influence, and ability to interact. You outlined an excellent progression that we've had with UN Habitat. And it's that kind of progression that's very important with that organization, perhaps others, OECD, World Bank, and so on, and playing a role. We're kind of the voice of planners around the world, looking at collective problems and collective issues. But we have to recognize that GPEAN has very limited resources in terms of administrative and manpower, and we rely on basically people who are interested and want to volunteer. And that kind of leads me to the next issue, is that we just find some way to retain on various committees or approaches people who've been involved in GPEAN and who then want to continue to participate. You know, a number of the organizations have their rules of who's the GPEAN rep, and they're there for a year or two and then they're gone. And they're very active, but then they're kind of moved out of the situation. You have to find ways to retain that interest for those who are interested, their skills and their talent as part of the GPEAN pool. We've been very fortunate to have you on board for a long time, but that's not always the opportunity in all these organizations. And again, you mentioned that there's a lot of opportunities in UN Habitat, and Paolo can't follow them all by his own. So you need to draw on other people who are interested parties who understand the GPEAN mission, who want to participate. You know, we've had a lot of people who have been very strong over the years. You know, all of a sudden, Ella was there playing a great leadership role, and then she disappears because there's somebody else involved. There's lots of people who've come in and out who I think would be very happy to stay on if there's the vehicle for them to play a role. So we have to look at ways of engaging those people and keeping them in play. And part of this also goes to the idea of having working groups or thematic groups that people have already talked about. Some of them may be on substantive policy issues. You know, it could be, there should have been a group looking at COVID-19 recovery and then maybe reporting at the conference. There could be people looking at the use of educational approaches, such as a studio and doing international studios. These working groups could report back and we could build these into the conference themes. One of the things that's always a challenge for every one of our congresses is that we're trying to pick the titles for the tracks. you know, and different countries have different approaches to things, really different language used, but there could be tracks to have these themes and groups report, and then that would lead into future policy applications and maybe into other places where we make an impact with outside organizations. So I think there's a way to engage the people and also have these thematic groups that doesn't have to be overly administrative. They're not going to be standing groups. They could be ad hoc to various things. We could draw on the expertise of some of the people who have been involved in GPEAN to take a leadership, and then bring in other experts and interested parties from the other organizations around the world. And the last piece is in terms of the students. And I think there could be a need to engage students. There may be a group of GPEAN PhD students who have discussions, meeting kind of off on the side, who may even want to have one of them selected to come to the GPEAN meetings and have a student rep at GPEAN from an international group. I think we need to engage the students more directly as well and bring them on board. So there's a few quick thoughts, things to consider. I'm not saying they're all the right ones. There's things to throw out there is for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I think Ayla, you would be next.
Yes. Okay. I will say very similar things, I guess, to all the speakers. Well, if the first 20 years started with each association getting to know each other, starting to understand each other, I guess the next 20 years could be more about trying to make the rest of the world or the outside world to understand us better. So I think that brings us to the issue of visibility again. Visibility of the planning profession, visibility of the planning education, promotion of the planning education. Well, these things have already started, in fact. So I'm not saying that the all first 20 years were about getting to know each other. We had already started establishing links with the with many professional bodies, and we talked about many United Nations initiatives as well. And what I understand is at the opening speech of the conference too, there was an emphasis on the need for an increased role in international policy, increased role of GPEAN in international policy. These have already started, and an increased role would be something I guess very positive. These have already started with many UN-related issues, also including the planners for climate action. This was something that GPEAN supported very much, and many associations, many member associations of GPEAN network got involved with. But I want to say it in a very pragmatic way. Let's say this increasing of the visibility of the associations should be first of all for making this education more attractive to students, to make the students choose planning education, planning departments, but also to provide increased working opportunities to our graduates. And secondly, this increased visibility could result in, but it can also be created by training for capacity building of already existing graduates, already existing working professionals. Of course, I'm not saying that GPEAN as the network would be more involved with that, but perhaps the member associations and the member schools, there could be more to do with providing training for all the issues that my colleagues have been talking about related to climate, migration, etc. And so I think here again, visibility would be my keyword. Well, we keep saying that GPEAN cannot overcome all those things, but of course it can create a discussion around those things. And like David mentioned, I would also invite us all to think about how to further institutionalize GPEAN. This would also include finances. whether GPEAN can have income, because it may not happen in the next 5 years, but if we're talking about the next 20 years, for the continuity, for a healthy institutional structure, I guess we will have to be looking into such things as some income, which would of course then be used to facilitate all these actions to again promote the profession, promote the visibility of planning education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. And Wu, we'll give you the last word on this.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, the colleagues from the different continents, different organizations. I learned from you a lot. Actually, like Era says, what I say, what you already mentioned, a lot of opinion is what totally of my opinion. In memory of the 20th anniversary of GPEAN, and in last year, I already called a lot of professors from the different continents. The same day, I invite them again, gathering again in Shanghai, in Tongji University, and to listen for the totally same topic, last 20 years and the coming 20 years. And I listen a lot also from them. Also today, I learn again from you a lot. And I would, very shortly, I would like say three sentences. The first of all, I would like say, learning from the local adapting praxis. It's very important for our students. They will have the opportunity only in their local praxis. But just like Era mentioned, also the Dr. Eisen just mentioned, we have the same challenge, yes. But if we should action is for the address to the climate change, and on the other side, we should know more, the more needs praxis in different continents, different countries, different cities. It's the resource of the knowledge and also help our students, the future, have their career. So the first of all, I would like to say, learning from the local adapting practice for climate change, the working skill, that is the resource from the planning education. First of all. Second, I would like to say, exchange is not today is should become the daily life, daily teaching program. It's not just like 20 years ago, we have to gathering 5 years one times. It's too long. Today we can change it as the daily life. I would establish more and more the contact with you, and I think we can sharing the different teaching just today and the daily tomorrow and much frequency. That's the second sense. Third one, I think the GPEAN should be in the future more and more as the platform to serve the student individually, serve the teaching program, teacher praxis, and the teaching also serve the local, not only the top down, also the platform for every people can use this platform. That is, I think, the final very important, not say 5 years and the top down, and also the platform for daily life, daily teaching program. That should be in the coming 20 years, we will working very hard. So that's thank you again for your initiative. I think we will do much hard for then the first 20 years for the daily change, for serve the individual student for their praxis. If they have got the knowledge from the GPEAN, they will support our organization. Thank you. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Wu. Very nice note for us to end that segment on. You know, my notes here are that this long list of ideas and many of them so very potentially productive, are focused on collaboration, profile, the value of GPEAN as a clearinghouse, influence on policy, and building capacity internally within GPEAN, capacity of our schools, but also especially of emerging scholars and the young members of our profession. So really, I think, powerful list that is going to give a lot of ideas to the council and hopefully stimulate a lot of discussion so that we can move to a viable plan for the next years ahead. And what there are, I think, 4 members of the council that are here in the room, and we look forward to your taking some of these ideas and moving them forward. Let me, and of course, we'll do a report from this session for the council. But let's take a moment to see if any of the participants have questions or comments for us. Oli, let's get you a microphone.
Well, thank you, Bruce and everyone. My name is Holly. I'm a local organizing committee. I'm a secretary of ASPE also. My honor my thought to join these discussions. Yeah, actually, I just would like to say our experience to when we do this this activity, and also we learn how GPEAN work, because this is the voluntary organizations. Also in here, we in ASPE also work in voluntary organizations. Maybe I just give 2 points regarding to the what maybe we would like to promote. The first, when we talk about the voluntary organizations, then not everyone can have would like to do, yeah. But actually, in ASPE also in GPEAN, we can promote local initiative as our energy integrate to do what GPEAN will do. There is many programs here, but I see from the experience, GPEAN many organizations, but the correct me if I have mistake on it. Just what WPSG, WPSG is the integrations all together. Yeah, many activity also in organizations, in associations. But let maybe we have a planning studio. Maybe we have student competitions. Maybe we have a joint lecture. Many things. Bring these things not just in the association, but bring it up to the GPEAN level. Make it more global. So if GPEAN take this initiative from the locals, then actually we already have the energy from the locals. They have the resources, they have the initiative, they want to, but then we can make it integrate all together in global context. I very appreciate with Zorika, Eduardo, and David that bring us to do what we need to do in the context of global. In first time, we don't know very well what we need to do, but with the not directions, yeah, but by desire from the steering committee, then we follow this thing. So just invite the local initiative, but then we can integrate within this global levels. I think this is quite important, but might be more practical. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Others who want to add anything? Then we promised the panelists a chance to say a very short intervention at the end if they have something to summarize that they'd like to add. Don't feel that you have to say something, but if you wish, no more than a minute apiece. Maybe we start with that side of the room, if any of the 3 of you have something.
this active? Yes, thank you. Well, I'll just want to conclude or say what some already have mentioned, that there were successful and hardworking and disciplined commitment of many people in the past 20 years, and achievements have been made. And I think the institutionalization, as Ella mentioned, of some of the activities, more structure, more formal commitment to some of the elements of what is the mission of GPN, I think would help. And that's both in education, collaborative research, and the way. So it's really about building on the existing and extending the reach toward visibility of planning and planning profession and education, and also relevance to the current events, current problems in our society, particularly the common problems that are across the world, that are global.
I'm only say thank you for the invitation and congratulate the first promoter. The work of GPN is shown here, it's shown with all of the work of do it at this day. Congratulations.
Yeah, also to congratulate for this initiative and also to highlight the word networking. I think it's the key word on all this process, and also this networking as a summing up process in which every year there's new members joining, there's new people involved, and there's a critical mass increasing. So I think this is an important aspect of this of all this process. Thank you.
I will add something new just because it came after everybody has mentioned the limited capacity of GPEAN that's run through volunteers that put in tremendous amounts of work. And there's a lot of other initiatives that we would like to do. So maybe modeled after planners for climate action, there could be working groups under GPEAN that might be seeded and kind of catalyzed by GPEAN, but then they would be self-organizing, and people could just start working on initiatives that GPEAN, if necessary and possible, can support at the higher levels. And I will just finish where I started and want to thank all the past and present GPEAN Council members on all their hard work through the years to bring GPEAN to this really successful 21st anniversary and the 5th Congress.
First, I'd like to thank Bruce for your initiative to run this session. Of course, for everyone who's been involved in this, for those who are also attending this. Next point is, I like to piggyback from Holly's comment about local initiative. That's important if we have something in local level or in association level that very much can be also replicated or expanded in the next level, which is in the global level. Also something that I like to support. Just as I said, at CSP we have also climate action task force. So it's also something that we've been promoting in the last few years, a couple of years. Also same thing with task force of anti-racism. There's something that we just started in SCSP since summer 2022. So, I mean, summer 2020. So local initiative, if we need to gain more attention, expanded, replicated in other part of the world, will be also very helpful. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Let's go online. Wu, would you like to say something at the end here? I don't know if Wu still is on. Well, we'll come back to you, David.
Yes, I just like to say that GPEAN's really benefited from really good leadership over the years. And I think that's been the strength. Our people have been committed. People who've chaired the GPEAN committee have been very strong, and people have been willing to work hard in various capacities. And I think if we can expand through working groups, more interested parties, and focus on important issues, it's going to just make us a stronger organization. And, I know from my experience, working with and meeting with the group of GPEAN has been a great benefit to me, because learning from each other and getting to know people has been something very important. So we can build the expertise and build the knowledge and build the relationships across the organizations.
Thank you, Ayla.
Well, very valuable network. It has been a great honor to be a part of this team. And now celebrating its first 20 years, now I must say that I'm looking forward to see how the next 20 years unfolds. And hopefully, I hope that happens with the network growing in terms of number of member associations, growing in terms of its activities and interactions, and growing in terms of further collaborations, new partnerships.
Thank you. Wu, if you're there and you would like to say something, please, now would be the time. But I think not. All right. Well, this conversation reminds me how much we are alike around the world as planning educators, how our mission, our aims, our goals are so similar, how the challenges that we face are so similar, and how much we have to learn from each other. Despite the similarities, there are very different flavors of the way we do things. And we have a great deal to learn by being exposed to those different flavors around the world. Really, I think, underscores the value of the GPEAN project. And I am impressed with this list of suggested new activities and projects. There's a great deal of wealth on this list, and I think we'll give the council tremendous opportunities to think through. The key is going to be capacity and how we can harness the energy and the coordination to be able to do as many of these things as possible. And those of you who are on the council, I wish you Godspeed in making this happen, and building in the next 20 years a GPEAN that is richer and deeper and wider and more effective than GPEAN has been in the past 20 years. So thank you all very much, and good luck with the rest of the Congress.
Goodbye.
Bye, folks. Thank you.
Have a nice evening, David.
Thank you. You have a good morning.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, goodbye all.